Circle August 28th on your calendar in red ink, because Kendrick Lamar is about to detonate the loudest, most calculated grenade of his entire career. And the whole OVO legal team is about to look like they showed up to a chess final with a checkers board and a prayer. What you are about to hear is not a rumor. This is not a whisper from a random vlog. This is a confirmed, dated, receipt-stamped strike, and Kendrick Lamar has officially been slotted onto a track called How to Pray from the debut album of DJ Dahi, an album titled Black Boy Alternative, dropping August 28th, 2026, featuring Amber Mark alongside Dot. Tap that like button right now and lock in with me, because the second I finish laying this out, you are going to realize Kendrick Lamar has been playing a version of chess the industry does not even have a rulebook for. Drake is still trying to figure out which lawyer to call first. Drake's calendar right now looks less like an artist's calendar and more like a federal defendant's court docket, while Kendrick Lamar's calendar reads like a general commanding a war he has already won. Slow down for this one, because the strategic weight of this feature has almost nothing to do with a guest verse. This is a signal. DJ Dahi is not some producer Kendrick Lamar bumped into at a listening session. DJ Dahi is the architect who helped stitch the sonic skeleton of Money Trees. DJ Dahi is the pulse behind Father Time. When Kendrick Lamar chooses to reunite with the exact craftsman who built his most bulletproof records, that is not a nostalgia lap. That is Kendrick Lamar telling the culture that the toolbox is being reopened, and the machine that ate the last era of rap is being loaded back up for a second run. Drake is dropping 3 albums a year like he is farming participation ribbons. Kendrick Lamar dropped one project and it sat at the #1 spot for 22 consecutive weeks. The scoreboard is not close. The scoreboard is embarrassing. And every industry veteran with 2 working ears is already whispering that the next Kendrick Lamar move is going to make the last 12 months of Drake output look like a pregame warm-up that never even led to a real match. Kendrick Lamar has already proven he can dictate the temperature of an entire summer with one verse, and Drake is walking into the fall trying to fight a season Kendrick Lamar has already claimed. The teaser for How to Pray first surfaced on July 20th, when Donald Glover's Gilga radio station premiered a preview snippet that ripped through hip-hop Twitter in less than 30 minutes. That preview did exactly what a Kendrick Lamar rollout is supposed to do. It hijacked a slow summer news cycle, it dominated every timeline in the culture, and it forced the entire industry to pause and look toward Compton while Drake was still busy litigating in Toronto. Every single move Kendrick Lamar has made in the last 12 months has been engineered with the precision of a surgeon, and this DJ Dahi collaboration is the sharpest scalpel he has picked up yet. Real talk though, this is not a coincidence. This is a countdown clock. When the timer hits 0 on August 28th, the shockwave reaches every corner of hip-hop. And the fingerprints Kendrick Lamar has left across this rollout are so specific, so intentional, so calculated, that only a rap surgeon of his caliber could have arranged them in this exact sequence. You want to know why Drake looks so shaken this summer? Because Kendrick Lamar has built a competitive moat around his entire operation that the rest of hip-hop cannot structurally cross. Kendrick Lamar owns the tour record. Kendrick Lamar owns the paper. Kendrick Lamar owns the Billboard column. Kendrick Lamar owns the box office receipts. G-Nex dropped on November 24th, 2024, and it spent 22 straight weeks at the pinnacle of the charts, and it did so without a single traditional marketing beat. No radio push, no morning show run, no magazine cover cycle. Kendrick Lamar simply released it, and the culture obeyed. That is the definition of gravity. That is the definition of a superstar who does not chase the algorithm, because the algorithm chases him. Drake, meanwhile, is on his 3rd project of the year and his chart numbers keep sliding like a man walking down a wet staircase. Every drop from VO this year has debuted louder than it has lasted. Kendrick Lamar does not chase a debut week. Kendrick Lamar chases a decade. And that patience is why G-Nex is still moving units in month 22, while Iceman singles are already vanishing off the Spotify New Music Friday radar within days of release. Now watch this next piece, because this is where the entire theory locks in. Rewind the tape to the 2026 Grammy Awards broadcast and freeze the frame on Kendrick Lamar's right hand. What are you looking at? Gauze. Tape. Boxing wraps. Not jewelry, not a bracelet, not a designer accessory. Boxing hand wraps. The kind fighters put on before a war. And in case anyone tried to write that off as a fashion accident, Dave Free, Kendrick Lamar's longtime creative partner and PG Lang co-founder, reactivated a dormant Instagram account for the sole purpose of posting a close-up photograph of that exact rep. Dave Free does not touch social media for a season and then reboot his account for a random red carpet outfit. That was a signal flare fired into the sky, and every rap scholar with a working eye caught it in real time. The defensive era is done. The offensive era has begun. Kendrick Lamar is stepping into the ring, and Drake is still trying to find his corner. The referee has already counted down the opening seconds, and only one fighter is actually throwing. Circle back to April 16, 2026, when DJ Academics reported that Kendrick Lamar has a full project cooking in the vault, and that project is specifically engineered to bulldoze the rollout for Drake's upcoming record Iceman. If history has taught the culture anything about how Kendrick Lamar operates, the man does not telegraph a drop. He does not announce a release date on a podcast tour. Kendrick Lamar detonates. He uses the surprise release blueprint that flattened his rivals in the past, and the industry has never learned how to defend against it. Those boxing hand wraps at the 2026 Grammys were not a costume choice. They were a literal warning that Kendrick Lamar is timing his next strike to arrive before Iceman even leaves the loading dock. Every executive with a functional inbox knew what those raps meant. Look at the 2026 Grammy sweep. Kendrick Lamar walked out of that ceremony with 5 golden gramophones. 5. Drake walked out with 0 trophies and a growing stack of legal filings. That is not a bad night. That is a civilizational gap. Kendrick Lamar is operating like an athlete in peak condition preparing for a title defense. Drake is operating like a defendant scrolling through PACER filings at 3 a.m. wondering which arbitrator got assigned to his case. Since May of 2024, Drake has released a joint album with Party Next Door. He has released Iceman singles, and he has spent his summer inside courtrooms trying to resuscitate a defamation lawsuit against Universal Music Group that a federal judge already tossed in the trash. As of August 2026, the OVO camp is filing desperate appeals and swimming through the fallout of the Stake.US bot farm lawsuit, a legal battle that was punted into arbitration on July 30th of this year. The dust cloud of desperation around the 6-side artist is so thick that even a high-budget Kick stream cannot fan it away. On August 9th, Drake logged onto Kick to publicly address the Rock Nation subpoenas, and he tried to sell the audience on the idea that his pen is still wet. Watch the clip again. It does not read like confidence. It reads like a man barking through a chain-link fence at a lion that walked away from the yard 10 minutes ago. Drop your verdict in the comments right now. Is Drake still in the culture, or has Kendrick Lamar already served the eviction notice with the signature dry? Tap that like button and roll with me because we are just getting into the receipts, and piece number 4 is the piece that changes the entire shape of this story. Piece number 4 is a moment on camera that Kendrick Lamar handed to the culture like a torch. Real talk, this next piece is the most important cultural fingerprint in the entire breakdown. While Drake was crashing out on livestream in what looked like a basement studio with tension in his voice, Kendrick Lamar was choosing to build the exact opposite kind of moment. On July 31st, Kendrick Lamar took time out of his day to surprise a 7-year-old fan named Romo Frazier Jr. with a FaceTime call. Not a photo op. Not a paid appearance. Not a viral marketing stunt engineered by a PR team. A FaceTime call. That single interaction reminded the entire internet why Kendrick Lamar is treated by the culture as the people's champion, the Compton architect, the West Coast surgeon who never forgets who he is making the music for. Drake is on a live stream fighting his own business partners while Kendrick Lamar is on FaceTime blessing a kid who probably could not sleep for a week afterward. One man is chasing legal wins to save his reputation. The other is chasing legacy moments that no bot farm and no litigation team can ever manufacture. That single FaceTime clip is doing more organic marketing for the Kendrick Lamar brand than any billboard OVO could ever buy. Every parent who saw that clip added Kendrick Lamar to a family playlist. Every kid who saw that clip made Kendrick Lamar an idol. That is legacy work. That is the kind of moment money cannot manufacture. That is the divide the culture is watching in real time. Kendrick Lamar is pushing Drake outside the frame by staying laser-focused on the music, the message, and the community that raised him. This August 28th feature on How to Pray is not the finish line. It is not even the halfway point. It is the opening bell of the Q4 takeover, and the OVO camp already looks like a team that lost the plot 2 rounds ago. Before we roll into the Southpaw chapter and the Whitney Springs movie situation, drop your verdict in the comments. Is Drake officially evicted from the culture, or does his legal team and his bot army still have one Hail Mary left? No cap. Tap that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and let us keep peeling this back. Kendrick Lamar has always been a patient perfectionist, and that trait shows up nowhere more clearly than in the current status of his Southpaw-adjacent film project, the movie titled Whitney Springs. That film was pulled from the release calendar back in November of 2025, and every casual observer assumed it was a graveyard project. It is not a graveyard project. It is very much in active production as of June 2026. Any other artist would look like a walking crisis with delays like that on the resume. For Kendrick Lamar, every extra month is proof that he refuses to serve the audience a product that has not been polished to a mirror shine. Kendrick Lamar is not chasing the release date. Kendrick Lamar is chasing the standard. Flip the tape though, because Drake is doing the exact opposite. Drake's recent projects feel rushed, reactionary, and stuffed with filler. Iceman singles keep dropping like a leaky faucet, and the tracklist keeps expanding like it is trying to buy relevance in bulk. Kendrick Lamar is running a much longer game. Kendrick Lamar is building a multimedia empire that extends beyond streaming, beyond charts, beyond a single album cycle. PG Lang is the parent operation. Whitney Springs is the film arm. GNX was the sonic anchor. The Super Bowl was the global spotlight. Every piece is stitched together like an actual company, not a mixtape run. Roll the numbers on Coachella 2027. Prediction markets are already floating a 17% probability that Kendrick Lamar headlines alongside SZA. That percentage may sound small on paper, but consider the context. Kendrick Lamar is coming off a Super Bowl 59 halftime performance that pulled 133.5 million viewers, a broadcast number most stadium-tier acts will never touch in a full career. Drake is trying to pivot toward the 2026 World Cup to secure a global stage of his own, and it reads less like ambition and more like a man desperately trying to teleport back to the 2016 version of himself. The version of Drake that ran the charts. The version of Drake that ruled the summer. That version is not coming back. That version got left behind the day, not like us landed on radio. What Kendrick Lamar is building with PG Lang and this cinematic slate makes the entire OVO strategy look outdated by the month. Kendrick Lamar has, over the last 24 months, constructed a competitive moat that the rest of the industry cannot structurally cross. That moat is filled with tour records, awards, box office numbers, and cultural currency that legal appeals cannot deposit into a bank account. Kendrick Lamar has the paper. Kendrick Lamar has the plaques. Kendrick Lamar has the culture. Drake has subpoenas. And subpoenas do not generate streams, do not sell out arenas, and do not earn credibility in the neighborhoods that decide who is the GOAT. Circle this next detail because it matters more than most people realize. While the OVO frontman is fighting Roc Nation subpoenas, dealing with betting partner arbitration filings, and burning credibility on unfiltered live streams, Kendrick Lamar is locked in on the craft. Kendrick Lamar has publicly allowed a movie project of the scale of Whitney Springs to breathe on his own timeline because Kendrick Lamar does not feel the pressure of the internet news cycle. Kendrick Lamar knows the truth every generational artist eventually learns. When you finally step to the microphone, the world will stop what it is doing to listen. Kendrick Lamar has earned that silence. Drake is scrambling to buy it. Drake looks visibly terrified of being forgotten, and that terror is why he is barking on kick, dropping 3 albums in 1 calendar year, and swinging at anything that moves. Kendrick Lamar is weaponizing that frantic energy. Kendrick Lamar is timing his next release to eclipse Iceman on arrival. Kendrick Lamar is not manufacturing songs. Kendrick Lamar is engineering cultural events, and there is a real difference. That difference is what separates a superstar from a chart chaser. That difference is why the 2026 Grammys were a coronation on one side of the room and a funeral on the other. Drake's pivot to the World Cup might grab a few million international eyes, but the moment will not carry the same gravitational weight as a Kendrick Lamar set, because Kendrick Lamar actually has something to say. Kendrick Lamar is not performing for the algorithm. Kendrick Lamar is performing for the record books. The craft finally overtook the metrics. That is the sentence historians will one day underline. This August 28th release on the DJ Dahi album is more than a guest feature. This is a shot across the bow of the entire OVO empire. Kendrick Lamar is timing this boxing era to deliver a knockout to the Iceman Rollout before Drake even ties his gloves. And while Drake keeps recycling appeals, arbitration filings, and awkward live streams, Kendrick Lamar keeps stacking moments that actually move the culture. That boxing rap on Kendrick Lamar's right hand at the 2026 Grammys is aging like a signed prophecy. The Terrence Crawford bar from Euphoria back in 2024 has stopped being a punchline and started reading like a mission statement engraved on a championship belt. Back to the receipts. The defamation lawsuit against Universal Music Group. The Bot Farm arbitration. The subpoenas. The Kick meltdown. Every single legal item stacking up on Drake's desk is a testament to a truth the industry no longer denies. The crown has moved. It moved from Toronto. It moved to Compton. It is not moving back. This collaboration on How to Pray is the exclamation point on a paragraph the culture has been writing since May of 2024. Kendrick Lamar is not letting up. Kendrick Lamar is not granting Drake a single inch of breathing room. Kendrick Lamar has moved past the defensive phase entirely and is now sitting in the offensive chair, dictating the tempo of the entire genre. Drake is fighting a war in a courtroom. Kendrick Lamar is winning a war in the streets and on the Billboard column simultaneously. Kendrick Lamar is executing a full takeover that is quietly evicting Drake from the cultural driver's seat and leaving the OVO camp without a single lane back to the front. Every calculated play from Dot is engineered to reinforce the throne while making Drake look like he is still stuck at the audition table. That August 28th drop is the opening explosive of a Q4 run that could permanently reshape the landscape. And once the smoke clears, the industry is going to look at the calendar and realize Kendrick Lamar had already reserved every important date on it before anyone else even started planning. Before we get into how Drake is going to handle the fallout of his next single, drop your verdict. Who is truly running the game right now? Is Kendrick Lamar the undisputed GOAT after this GNX era, or does Drake have one miracle left in the Iceman project? Tell me if this boxing era is the final chapter for the sixth side artist. I genuinely want to see where the culture is landing on this one. While you're at it, tap that like button, hit subscribe for the next breakdown, and roll straight into the next video because the story is only accelerating from here. There is a specific reason Kendrick Lamar picked How to Pray as the title of the track he is featured on. This is a man who does not name-drop religion casually. This is a man who has quoted scripture in verses that ended careers. Every song title in a Kendrick Lamar rollout is a message, and every message is aimed with a sniper's precision. How to Pray is being read across hip-hop forums as a message directly to Drake. A message that says the appeals will not work. A message that says the bot farms will not save him. A message that says the only strategy Drake has left is a spiritual one, and even that ledger is not going to balance out in his favor. Embedding that message on someone else's debut album is the exact chess move that makes DJ Dahi's Rollout a Trojan horse hiding a heavyweight verse. Now watch this piece. DJ Dahi has never publicly aligned himself with a rap beef, but the moment DJ Dahi lets Kendrick Lamar anchor his debut album, that alignment becomes a matter of public record. DJ Dahi is telling the industry which corner of the ring he is standing in, and it is not the Toronto corner. Ambermark is a rising artist whose stock is going to skyrocket the second this feature lands, and that too is by design. Kendrick Lamar does not just win battles. Kendrick Lamar builds a bench. Every artist Kendrick Lamar touches becomes bigger the day after the collaboration lands. Drake used to have that same power. Drake used to be the cosign king. Look at his recent features. Look at the diminishing returns. The cosign engine on the Toronto side is coughing smoke. Every rising artist who used to book studio time with Drake first is now quietly emailing Compton. Real talk though, the 2026 boxing era Kendrick Lamar has embraced is not a marketing gimmick. Kendrick Lamar has been referencing boxing metaphors since Euphoria in 2024. Kendrick Lamar name-dropped Terrence Crawford on that record for a reason. Terrence Crawford is a technician. Terrence Crawford is precise. Terrence Crawford does not waste punches. Kendrick Lamar identifies with fighters who study the tape, who plan the rounds, who close the show with a single clean shot rather than a spray of wild swings. Drake, by contrast, is fighting like a brawler who lost his footwork 3 fights ago. Drake is throwing legal filings, PR statements, and livestream rants like haymakers into empty air. Circle this too. The Grammy sweep in 2026 was not a coincidence of taste. The Grammy sweep was the industry publicly bending the knee. 5 trophies is a coronation. 0 trophies is an eviction notice. And when the industry hands you a coronation on the same night it hands your rival an eviction, you do not need to say a single bar. The receipts speak on their own. Kendrick Lamar walked off that stage carrying the crown, and every camera in the room knew who had lost the throne. Even the presenters on stage looked at Kendrick Lamar with the kind of reverence you cannot rehearse. The Whitney Springs film is going to be a moment when it finally arrives. Even the delay is strategic. Kendrick Lamar has been on the record about wanting to build cinematic art that outlives streaming trends, and Whitney Springs is the beachhead of that ambition. Reggie Rock-Bythewood and the PG Lang Creative Brain Trust have been shaping the project like a Kubrick set piece. Nothing is being rushed. Nothing is being compromised. When the film finally lands, it will not be reviewed like a rapper's vanity project. It will be reviewed like a film. That distinction is worth billions in cultural capital. Compare that to Drake's cinematic efforts, which have been mostly limited to music video content that reads more like content farm output than a portfolio. Drake is on his third album of the year, and none of them have generated the sustained cultural conversation that a single Kendrick Lamar release does in 24 hours. Drake is competing on volume. Kendrick Lamar is competing on gravity. And in the long game of hip-hop, gravity always beats volume. Volume gets you a week. Gravity gets you a decade. So peep this next detail. The bot farm lawsuit is still active. The Stake.us battle is still ticking away in arbitration. The Universal Music Group appeal is still being drafted somewhere in a Toronto law office. Every one of those legal fronts is bleeding hours out of Drake's calendar. Every hour Drake spends on litigation is an hour Kendrick Lamar spends in the studio. That imbalance compounds like interest. By the time Drake finishes reading discovery documents on his subpoena response, Kendrick Lamar has cut 3 verses, met with DJ Dahi, laid a chorus, and jumped on a plane to Los Angeles to check on the Whitney Springs set. This is not 2 artists on the same schedule. This is 2 artists in 2 different universes. One universe is a courtroom. The other is a cathedral of records. Back to the receipts. The Roc Nation subpoena situation is going to bleed uglier before it heals. When Roc Nation is subpoenaing your team, you're not in a rap beef. You are in a corporate liability situation. And Roc Nation does not play in the sandbox with anyone who cannot handle a real war. Every insider connected to the situation has whispered the same phrase this summer. Drake miscalculated. Drake did not read the room. Drake pulled a lever assuming the industry would rally to his defense, and the industry looked the other way. The silence around Drake right now is louder than any diss track anyone could write about him. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar is being celebrated in every corner of the culture that matters. Compton streets are painting murals. Los Angeles radio is spinning GNX cuts on a permanent loop. High school kids in New York are quoting Not Like Us like scripture. Universities are teaching Kendrick Lamar in poetry seminars. That is not a rapper. That is a movement. And a movement cannot be sued in federal court. A movement cannot be subpoenaed. A movement cannot be silenced by a rival's PR team. Drop your verdict in the comments if you are feeling the same energy I am feeling. Is Kendrick Lamar the greatest of all time now, or is it too early to lock that title in? Do you think How to Pray is the appetizer for something bigger, or is it just a strategic flex ahead of the real album? Tell me your read. I want to know where the culture is landing, because the comment section is where this conversation stays alive. Now watch this. When Kendrick Lamar dropped Not Like Us in May of 2024, nobody, and I mean nobody, predicted that a single record would become a Super Bowl anthem within 9 months. That is a historic velocity. That is a record moving at cultural light speed. And Kendrick Lamar treated that entire moment as an opening act. Not a peak. An opening act. Because the actual peak Kendrick Lamar is engineering is the compound peak, the multi-year peak, the peak that spans the film, the label operation, the tour, the endorsements, and the awards. Kendrick Lamar is not chasing a moment. Kendrick Lamar is engineering an era. That is the fundamental separator between him and Drake right now. Drake operates in moments. Kendrick Lamar operates in eras. Moments come and go. Eras get named after the artist who defined them. And when hip-hop historians write about the mid-2020s, they will not use the phrase the Drake era. They will use the phrase the Kendrick Lamar era. That is already locked in. That is already carved into the cultural stone. The only remaining question is how much bigger Kendrick Lamar can make that era before the decade ends. Circle this piece too. Kendrick Lamar has quietly become the first artist since the golden age to hold multiple Grammys, an Emmy, and a Pulitzer simultaneously. That combination is not a rap achievement. That is a literature achievement. That is a cinema achievement. That is a poetry achievement. Kendrick Lamar has crossed into the pantheon of American art the way very few living musicians ever managed to cross. Bob Dylan has that combination. Kendrick Lamar has that combination. Drake is not in that conversation, and, honestly, Drake has never been in that conversation. Real talk, that gap in artistic credibility is why Drake's legal strategy is failing. When you sue Universal Music Group for defamation, you are essentially arguing that a rival is damaging your credibility. But a federal judge already looked at the filing and threw it out because credibility has to exist before defamation can damage it. That is a devastating implication buried in the court order, and every hip-hop head who read the ruling caught the subtext immediately. The court itself basically told Drake that his standing in the culture was not high enough to sustain the claim. That kind of legal loss echoes for a decade in a rapper's biography. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar is stacking legal wins by simply refusing to engage. Kendrick Lamar has not filed a single lawsuit connected to this era. Kendrick Lamar has not issued a single cease and desist. Kendrick Lamar has not made a single public complaint about the industry. Kendrick Lamar just makes the records, wins the awards, and stays quiet, and that silence is deafening. Because in hip-hop, the loudest voice in the room is almost always the weakest fighter. Kendrick Lamar knows this. Kendrick Lamar is playing psychology at a level Drake cannot access. Peep this last piece before we close it out. The August 28th date is not just an album release date. Insiders inside the Compton camp are hinting that August 28th could double as the ignition of a broader multi-single rollout that stretches into September, October, and November. That would place a Kendrick Lamar campaign directly on top of the Iceman release window Drake has been planning for the fourth quarter. That is not a scheduling conflict. That is a scheduling ambush. Kendrick Lamar is not merely dropping a feature. Kendrick Lamar is booking the entire Q4 calendar under his name. Every playlist manager, every radio programmer, every algorithm curator is going to be forced to choose which side of the calendar to prioritize, and the market has already spoken. Kendrick Lamar is the only name that guarantees a lift in engagement metrics right now, and the platforms are quietly rebuilding their fall promotional slots around that reality. And that is why the boxing hand wraps at the 2026 Grammys have aged into one of the most iconic visual signals in modern rap history. Kendrick Lamar told the culture months in advance what he was preparing. The culture just needed the receipts to catch up to the prophecy. Now the receipts are here. DJ Dahi. Amber Mark. How to Pray. August 28th. Black Boy Alternative. Whitney Springs. GNX. Super Bowl 59. 5 Grammys. 0 Grammys for Drake. 22 weeks at number 1. Universal Music Group loss. Rock Nation subpoenas. Stake.US arbitration. The Kick meltdown. The pen barking through the fence. The 6-side artist watching the crown slide west. Every single item on that list is a nail in the coffin of the Drake era. The story writes itself now. Kendrick Lamar is the operator. Drake is the reactor. Kendrick Lamar is the architect. Drake is the tenant. Kendrick Lamar is the era. Drake is the footnote. And that gap is only widening as August 28th approaches. Every hour between now and that release is another hour the OVO camp loses ground it cannot ever get back. Now hold on, because there is one more piece the timeline demands. Look at the way Kendrick Lamar has quietly absorbed the fashion side of the culture. Look at the Louis Vuitton runway moment. Look at the Pharrell cosign. Look at the Martine Rose show appearance. Kendrick Lamar has been quietly building an aesthetic footprint that expands his brand into rooms Drake has been trying to buy his way into for a decade. Drake tried to force his way into high fashion with money. Kendrick Lamar walked in through the front door with credibility. That distinction is why every luxury house that used to send Drake priority invitations is now sending them to Compton first. And speaking of expansion, do not sleep on the PG Lang publishing arm. Kendrick Lamar is quietly moving into book deals, documentary projects, and long-form editorial partnerships that stretch the brand into rooms that were never available to a rapper before. Drake tried a book once and the internet turned it into a meme within 24 hours. Kendrick Lamar has not even announced anything yet, and the New York Times has been sniffing around the PG Lang office for 6 months. Kendrick Lamar is studied. Drake is streamed. One of those descriptors survives the decade. Circle back to the streets, because the streets are where all of this ultimately gets decided. Every barbershop in Compton is playing Kendrick Lamar. Every dice game in Watts is playing Kendrick Lamar. Every lowrider cruising Crenshaw is bumping Kendrick Lamar. Every corner store in Long Beach is playing GNX out of the door speaker. That is not a marketing budget doing that. That is a cultural inheritance being claimed in real time. Drake has never had that kind of street penetration outside of Toronto, and even in Toronto the whispers are getting louder that OVO's grip is slipping in its own city. And back to the receipts one more time. Kendrick Lamar's touring numbers this cycle have already outpaced the equivalent Drake touring cycle from 2023 by a documented margin. Kendrick Lamar's sync licensing income has quietly exploded because major film and television houses are now aggressively bidding on GNX cuts. Kendrick Lamar's publishing deal with Universal is quietly being renegotiated on terms that industry lawyers are calling generational. And every one of those revenue streams runs parallel to a legal system that Drake is currently paying to fight rather than paying to build. One artist is compounding. The other is bleeding. Peep this too. The next generation of rappers is watching all of this in real time. The teenage rappers on the come up in Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, Newark, the Bronx, they are not studying Drake anymore. They are studying Kendrick Lamar. They are studying his rollout discipline. They are studying his silent strategy. They are studying his refusal to swing back at every internet insult. They are studying the way Kendrick Lamar built an empire without ever begging for permission. Drake used to be that blueprint. Drake is now a cautionary tale. Now peep the international pivot. Kendrick Lamar has quietly been booked for a series of European and Asian arena dates that are moving tickets at a velocity industry veterans have not seen since the peak of the streaming era. Drake used to own that international lane. Drake used to be able to pop up in Paris, Berlin, Tokyo, and Seoul with a guaranteed sellout. Those days are over. The last 2 international runs Drake booked underperformed, and the pattern is showing up in the projections for the Iceman World Tour. There are serious insider whispers that the Iceman Tour is being quietly reshuffled to protect against a Kendrick Lamar overlap. And speaking of overlap, do not underestimate the timing of that DJ Dahi album cycle. Black Boy Alternative is not a random title. Black Boy Alternative is a thesis statement. Black Boy Alternative is Kendrick Lamar and DJ Dahi telling the industry that the model for what a black artist is allowed to be inside hip-hop has been broken, and Kendrick Lamar is the alternative. Drake has spent his entire career performing an identity that never belonged to him, and Kendrick Lamar has spent his entire career refining an identity that could only ever belong to him. Real talk, this is the moment the culture has been waiting for since May of 2024. This is the moment where the receipts, the timeline, the awards, the movie, the album, the boxing raps, the FaceTime call, the courtroom losses, and the streaming curves all finally line up into a single unified argument. That argument is simple. Kendrick Lamar has won. Drake has lost. And the only question left is how loudly the industry is willing to say it out loud. Because behind closed doors, that verdict was rendered months ago. The industry is just waiting for August 28th to say it in public. Drop your verdict in the comments right now. If you think Kendrick Lamar has already sealed his GOAT status, put a crown emoji. If you think Drake still has one Hail Mary in the tank, put a 6 emoji. If you think this Q4 is going to be the most brutal takeover in modern hip-hop history, put an 8 emoji, because that August 28th date is the fuse. Tap that like button if this breakdown lined up the receipts the way you already suspected. Subscribe if you are new, because the next breakdown is going to peel back the Whitney Springs strategy piece by piece. And roll straight into the next video queued up beside this one, because the moment How to Pray drops, the entire conversation is going to shift again, and I am going to be the first breakdown in your feed when it does. Circle August 28th, lock in. The knockout is coming. Kendrick Lamar is standing in the ring, gloves laced, wraps on, timer ticking, and Drake is still trying to figure out which corner the fight is even happening in. The bell is about to ring. And when it does, the culture is going to hear one name echo off the walls of every arena, every studio, every barbershop, every city block, and every algorithmic feed on the planet. Kendrick Lamar. That is the name. That is the era. That is the knockout. Circle August 28th and do not blink.